Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us in our 2024 Government Contracting Summer Shorts Complimentary Webinar Series. Okay, first, a bit about Jennifer Schaus and Associates. We are based in downtown Washington, D.C., with a focus on advising established federal contractors. Our clients are companies who sell products, services, or software to the federal government and range from large businesses to mid-sized firms with millions in federal contracts. Separate from our consulting services, we have amassed a subscriber base of 34.7 thousand in our weekly newsletter, The Federal Contractor Weekly. We offer advertising opportunities in the newsletter, including sponsored content newsletters and webinars. If you're interested in reaching federal contractors, please email us and ask for a media kit. And now a bit about this series. As always, our webinars are complimentary and recorded. You can find all of our recordings on our YouTube channel simply by subscribing to it using the link you see on the screen. There is no cost. You can find all of our PowerPoints on the SlideShare site using your LinkedIn credentials to log in. Again, there is no cost. You can find the links to register for this series on our website, jenniferschaus.com, under the Webinars tab. There is a separate registration link for each webinar. Okay, now some more details about the series. We will be running this webinar series every day at 12 p.m. Eastern Time from Monday, August 12th to Friday, August 23rd, excluding Saturdays and Sundays. Our guest speakers will be covering various GovCon topics and will focus on areas, best practices, common pitfalls, and FAQs. At the end of the webinar, we will open up the floor to questions. Please type them into the control panel and I will read them in the order they are received. They will be read anonymously. Here's a glimpse of our speakers, leading ladies in contracting. Each speaker will cover a hot topic in federal contracting. There are more images of the ladies you will hear from over the next 2 weeks. Again, please remember you can find the full schedule and also the recordings on our website under the tab Webinars. For all of our webinars, please hop over to our complimentary YouTube channel.
Emma, the slides aren't moving.
Oh, shoot.
There we go.
Our webinars are complimentary thanks to our longtime and kind sponsors. We would like to thank our friends at GovEvents, the premier platform for posting events related to government and government contracting. You can find all of our webinars and our events on govevents.com, as well as recordings from our past 700 plus webinars. We also want to thank Tom Johnson and his team at Set Aside Alert, the go-to publication for contracting opportunities for small, women-owned, veteran-owned, HubZone, and 8A firms. Visit setasidealert.com for more information. Also, Fairfax County Economic Development Group is a great resource for businesses in Northern Virginia. Please visit their calendar to learn about events and trainings, including this webinar series. Now I want to tell you about our complimentary webinar series on Big Tech and federal government. Please join us this fall for our Big Tech webinar series. This series will run every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find the registration links on our website under Big Tech. As always, these webinars are complimentary and recorded. We will cover the top 15 big tech companies who sell to the U.S. federal government. This includes household names like Amazon, Facebook, X, Salesforce, and more. We will dig into the data to look at lobbying dollars spent, their special interests, stock price, and how that intersects with their federal contracts. We will dissect their civilian versus defense contracts, as well as contract vehicle dollars to include GWACs and GSA schedules. We will also look at their subcontracting dollars. This series is offering a unique sponsorship opportunity. We have heavily discounted this series to a rate of $1,500. This covers the entire series. Sponsor benefits include registration list, ample promo in our newsletter, and LinkedIn. You also get a sponsor side with a 100-word or less write-up about your business. If you are interested, please click on the sponsor link to place your order or send us an email to hello@jenniferschaus.com if you have any questions. The Virginia Apex Accelerator at George Mason University offers free one-on-one counseling to established government contracting firms in Virginia on federal, state, and local procurement topics. If you are interested in learning more, please use the links provided to explore their services, review homework recommendations, register for live training, and find useful links to agencies and other self-directed learning. One-on-one counseling is limited to eligible client companies. Appointment requests are handled in the order they were received and based on counselor availability due to high demand. Online resources and group trainings are free with no restriction on business location. Okay, and let's welcome today's speaker to the webinar. Our speaker today is Chelsea Meggett from Collaborative Compositions, and she will cover the topic capture. Chelsea, we're so excited to hear your presentation today. I'll put myself on mute and turn the floor over to you. Please let me know when you want to advance to the next slide.
Thank you so much, Emma. Appreciate it. Glad to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Chelsea Maggot. I am a business strategist, author, and government acquisition nerd, and ultimately a contracting consultant. I launched my business Collaborative Compositions in 2020 to facilitate better collaboration between small businesses and federal and prime customers that need access to those businesses. I bring more than a decade of experience working with industry and small businesses, mid-sized businesses, navigating the complex acquisition world. And in that time, I've gained a lot of familiarity with the vast spectrum of available acquisition pathways, best practices for capture, and gained some significant success with the small businesses I've worked with. Go ahead and advance the slides, Emma. Today, we're going to be talking about capture. Everybody knows that capture is basically the foundation for getting more work. It's how you actually capture the work. We'll go ahead and talk about some best practices. We'll get some pitfalls, and I'll go over some frequently asked questions. And I promise that you will leave this with some insights that you can walk away and take action on. Go ahead. So let's get started with best practices. Best practice numero uno. Know your customer and inside and out, and I mean really know them. This is stalking their social media, connecting with them on LinkedIn, memorizing their favorite coffee order. Okay. I'm just kidding about that. Don't stalk them literally, but get a sense for what they're doing in the world of the interwebs. Get friendly with them on LinkedIn. Know their past contracts. Study their mission, their challenges, their pain points, and get their strategic plans. Those are going to be incredibly helpful. This really can't be taken lightly. Getting to know your customer is basically the key prep work for making the best impression. This is making relationships with the key decision makers and the influencers that are involved in that agency or with that customer. Analyzing the past spending patterns in the contract vehicles to identify trends. You want to go to industry days, conferences, one-on-ones, and other events where you're going to have an opportunity to network with them, get your face in front of theirs, shake their hand. You want to schedule meetings with the decision makers, build a rapport, and gather intel. Gets that, used to be called water cooler conversations, but I don't know how many water coolers there are anymore. Folks, hallway conversations that people have when you're there, when you're present, when you're talking to them. The more that you understand about your customer, the better position that you're ultimately going to be to meet their needs. There's so much information available, and knowledge is really power. If you don't use the information that is available to build your knowledge, then you're really powerless in this industry. So first best practice is knowing your customer inside and out and getting to know them with the information that's readily available, and doing a little bit of homework. Next, so developing and documenting a strong capture strategy. So a solid understanding of your customer is one thing, but developing a winning capture strategy means putting an action plan in place to position yourself to win an opportunity well before the RFP or solicitation is released. This is identifying things as early as possible to get a head start. This means, acting on the hallway conversations and getting a sense for whether that's a real requirement, or going way back to things that are coming up for expiration in a year or two. Finding these things well in advance and getting a head start as much as you can. It gives you an opportunity to really get a competitive landscape feel, and you can assess your own strengths and weaknesses in comparison to what your competitors are doing. This will allow you to basically determine your win themes and discriminators, and you can essentially solution an approach to a requirement well before the requirement has even been officially released. This helps you develop a strong plan, develop customer-focused messaging and graphics and collateral, and all of a sudden you're in their brain. By the time they release the opportunity, you're still in their brain. You've got a strategy in place to keep your team aligned, your internal team and your external team, which we'll talk about in a minute. And you've got a strong, well thought out strategy that says what you need in place. You've got your discriminators, your win themes, your weaknesses, and how you're going to ghost the competition's weaknesses with your strengths. And ultimately, a strong, well thought out capture strategy is documenting it and having that laid out ahead of time will guide your strategic actions as you go through a pursuit. Having it on paper or having it in a some sort of portal or tracker, a HubSpot or something similar, making sure that you're able to track that capture strategy and that capture plan as you're progressing through it will be imperative for making sure that you can go back and look and learn lessons from all of the pursuits that you're doing. So if you won, you can figure out, what the strengths were that helped you win. If you lost, you can figure out what the weaknesses were that, prevented you from winning, and hopefully, mitigate those in the next capture plan. Go ahead. So next is building a winning team. Oftentimes companies come into a government contracting situation and they just believe that they can do it all. And that's fantastic. There's so many companies, there's really not, maybe the big five or whatever, the large primes, they think they can do it all, but they can't even do it all. Everybody needs to have a team of qualified, competent, and aligned partners that will help you get to the finish line of any deal. You can't do it alone. Most, especially larger contracts, over 5, 10, 20 million, you're going to have to start building in teams that can help you fulfill the requirements. You've got your specialty and expertise. Bring other companies that bring value that can add to that and fulfill the requirement fully is building a winning team. So assembling a team is essentially takes identifying the gaps and the capabilities in your past performance and your current team composition to find companies that can fill those gaps that you can partner with to fulfill the requirement as a whole. The government doesn't ask for parts or pieces of requests for information to be, requests for proposals to be fulfilled. They need whole solutions. So if you can't provide the whole solution, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't compete. It means that you need to build a team to be able to compete. Selecting teammates that have, and teammates are companies that are firms that have, similar alignment, similar culture, things that you find to be easy, interesting, enjoyable to work with, that complement the skills, the capabilities that your company has, fills gaps that you ultimately have in your current existing skills or capabilities. So finding teammates that have proven track records, past performance with the customer, relevant experience, strong customer relationships, even if they don't have past performance in contract form with a customer, they may have a customer relationship that is very strong and can add a ton of value to a team. So taking advantage of those folks that are out there that have currently worked with the customers that you're looking to work with and have those established relationships. Making sure when you build teams, you've got clear roles and responsibilities and established structures. So setting out some teaming agreement type structures before you start going and making teams is a great idea. Defining some of those roles and responsibilities, establishing some structure for how you would like the team to run if you are the prime or if they are the prime. Giving some consideration to how you function as a part of a bigger team is going to be advantageous to you when seeking to build teams. When you want to find companies, go find companies that have contracts with your customer already. Go find companies that have existing past performance or are the incumbent. You may have a better time, or incumbents are generally favored. So if you can get in with the incumbent and they've got a strong relationship, you can get in on their team, you can fulfill a bigger part of their requirement, and you can add value that way. So ultimately finding and fostering a collaborative teaming environment with your company is core to building successful bid and proposal teams that can execute the work. A winning team is more than a collection of logos. It's ultimately going to be something that works seamlessly together, and ultimately that you will be contracted with for a series of years. So be careful and just choose wisely when you're looking for teammates. Find the folks that align with your company and your company's culture. Go ahead. So fourth is going to be crafting compelling proposals. This is so often taken lightly. People will spend a ton of time building relationships, making sure that they've got everything in place. They've got the skill sets, they've got the labor, they've been doing the homework and doing the shaping of the opportunity for however long. And then when it gets to the proposal point, the ball kind of drops. Once you have a team in place, your customer, you've got a capture plan in place, part of that and the execution of the end of that is developing a compelling proposal, writing something that is focused on the requirement. And ultimately, this is sort of where the pen meets the paper, the rubber meets the road, if you will, in the culmination of a capture. You ultimately need to give a compelling, compliant, and responsive proposal that addresses the actual documented requirements as they are written. Too many people will go through and just kind of glaze over and submit things that they think are sufficient or they think meet a requirement. However, the government requirements are very clearly documented. Following the instructions to a T is just generally the baseline minimum qualification criteria. So if you neglect to mention that, or neglect to notice that it requires 12-point font and you use 11, that is a reason for your proposal to be thrown out. It's unfortunate, but yes, that is true because the instructions were clear. So make sure that you use you're really being clear, concise, compliant, and you've got well-structured content. Make your proof points really clear. Use metrics as often as you can. Bring in case studies to validate your claims if you don't have past performance. And you can utilize commercial past performance as well. Use persuasive, sort of benefits-driven language that really resonates with the evaluators, that is going to be speaking in their language. And just kind of give it a professional look and not an engineering plain paper look. A winning proposal is not just a regurgitation of the statement of work. That's never what it is, and don't copy and paste in that generalized regard. It should ultimately be a compelling sales document that persuades your customer that you are the best choice and that you've given this request the time and attention that it deserves to ultimately win. Okay. Next, remaining agile and adaptive. And this sounds so kind of generalized and broad, but ultimately remaining agile and adaptive is probably one of the key things in government contracting that I see fail. So many small businesses are stuck, and mid-sized and large businesses get really stuck on exactly what they're doing. And they tend to not be willing to change, augment, or redirect depending on the situation. That can be challenging in so many different ways because you're going according to plan, but then the government requirement is shifted, changed, or adjusted. Timelines often are a part of that, remaining flexible. Anything that you can do to be that adaptable, flexible, agile contractor that the government is looking for right now will be advantageous to you because they are ultimately looking to go faster with less money than they ever ultimately have before. So helping them in ways that they might not know that they need can be just a generalized way of getting ahead and sort of deepening your relationship with that customer. While you may be going off of plan or off of script, it can be an advantageous entryway to suggest alternate solutions, to put forward something they may not have thought would be something that would meet the requirement. So what I'm saying here is, in situations where they say that they have a specific need and a requirement, if you have something that meets that need or meets the requirement but isn't that specific need, submit it and explain how it meets the requirement, tell the story, and make sure that they can understand that too. It will help you, and it will help them sort of open their eyes to the art of the possible. If you remain agile and adaptive, they will sort of mirror that in their responses and their actions. Go ahead. So now that we've talked about some of the ultimate best practices, there's so many pitfalls and there's so many valleys and holes in this market. So ultimately, looking at some of the main ones, let's look at market research. The lack of market research is such, it's probably one of the biggest traps that I see companies fall into. It's falling into this blind opportunity pursuit. Without understanding the landscape, you don't understand the customer, you don't know where their past spending patterns were, you don't know, who their favorites are, you're not familiar with what your strengths and weaknesses are comparatively. You're just kind of shooting in the dark without doing the research ahead of time. Understanding if there are favorites that you have missed out on, or if this customer is notoriously difficult to work with, or if the opportunity has been, sort of tainted or shaped or wired for somebody else previously. Those are all things that you can get a sense for if you do the market research ahead of time. Don't pursue opportunities blindly. And don't pursue customers blindly. Prime contractors are the same way. Don't pursue them blindly. Go in with your homework done, understanding what it is that their needs are, what their requirements are, what they're working on, and how you can help them. And you'll be welcomed into their office again and again. If you don't do your homework, they tend to look at you a little funny and not be as friendly and maybe not welcome you back. Go ahead. So that kind of leads into insufficient relationship building. Customers buy from people or companies that they trust, that they know and trust. Now, this is one of those Instagram purchase kind of things, like, you're scrolling, you might not know and trust the thing that you bought on Instagram because you were scrolling, but it was in front of your face enough times that you kind of inherently got to know it. They're trying, that's an attempt to build a relationship with you. In government contracting, it's different because it will always be more advantageous to have a face-to-face relationship, though I have seen it work when there are remote relationships that exist. Making that time to build the relationship with the key decision makers and influencers, going to the events, talking to them, and engaging with them regularly to stay top of mind is critical. It's just one of those things. If you were to buy or get 7 bids, and one of them was from somebody or a company that you were familiar with, you had known that they had done good work for you, they previously had provided good services, and the rest were sort of new and didn't have any familiarity, didn't have any necessarily past performance with your specific group or agency, it's hard to move past that level of trust with the existing relationship that you have. So you have to go in with the mindset of, you've got to build a stronger and more engaging relationship than what they've currently got in order to be able to stay top of mind and edge that out. Without the strong relationships, you're just a faceless bidder that's submitting paper and that they really can't keep track of. Go ahead. The third is going to be inadequate, the third pitfall is going to be inadequate team assembly. So basically, a hastily put together team is rarely going to win, and this can ultimately be your downfall. So to prevent that, make sure that you're doing capabilities gaps analysis and past performance gaps analyses for all of your bids and opportunities and pursuits. Make sure that you've got qualifications matrices that you're filling out, and make sure that you've got those sent out to your teammates to be sure that they're filling those out too, so that you know where all of the skill sets, capabilities, past performance, everything that contributes to this, where that lies within the team. You can lay that all out really clearly, get a good sense for where there's gaps, where you need to possibly bring in some additional support, or if you potentially have some too much duplication or overlap and you may not need so much or so many team members in some cases. So ultimately making sure that the team is providing the most value to the government in what they're offering is the best way to go forward in building teams. Without a strong team, you're not going to be competitive, and without a strong and cohesive team, you're not going to be able to perform up to the government's standards. Go ahead. So the fourth is going to be poor proposal writing. Even the best capture plans, even the best relationships can be totally swept under the rug with poor proposals. Make sure that you are focusing your win themes, discriminators, features, benefits, all of the added value that you bring on that customer, and make sure it's focused on their themes. Be persuasive and use benefits-driven language. So make sure that it resonates with the people that you're talking to. Don't just copy and paste, but utilize the terminology and the language that they're utilizing. Make sure that you're speaking their language, not your commercial language or the language that makes sense to you. Make sure that you're putting it in terms that they can understand. If you're not writing a compelling, concise, compliant proposal, you're not even in the game to bid. It ultimately can be the point where you just fall out completely. So making sure that if you're investing your time and effort into developing long-term capture plans, that you're putting also the time and effort into developing strong proposals. And whether that's bringing in proposal writing resources, whether that's getting external help, internal help, you can utilize your team members as resources for help. Utilize all of the resources that are available to you to make sure that your proposal is as strong as possible when it goes in. Go ahead. And again, the way that we've always done it, it's the way that we've always done it. That's the losing mindset. That's an inflexible, inadaptive mindset. And this government contracting landscape is constantly shifting. You really have to adapt. You want to make sure that you're keeping an eye on your competitive landscape and your customers' evolving needs. So if your customer has recently announced something, a shift in direction, follow that shift and make sure you understand why that's taking place and what's happening. A good example is the recent reoptimization of the Air Force. They recently had a restructuring that took place that ultimately impacted a lot of the people working in the Air Force. Having a sense as to how that impacts them, how that impacts your Air Force customer, so that you can take that into consideration and be flexible because their needs are changing. That will ultimately allow you to shine in their eyes. That will highlight your strengths. Be willing to adjust your strategy and your solution. And if you need to, make sure that you're able and willing to adjust your team. Make sure that you've got resources out there, companies out there that you can call upon if you need other team members to augment on an opportunity. Make sure that you're engaged with your customer regularly and you continue to shape the opportunity. If you stop halfway through and it's been 2 months since I talked to that guy, that's way too long. They won't remember you. They've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people since then, and they've gone through thousands of pieces of paper. So really, ultimately, if you're waiting that long, you've lost their attention. You want to make sure that you want to make sure that you stay engaged in ways that are comfortable for them and not pestering. So ultimately, get on LinkedIn, send them an email, give them a call. Don't just spam them with email constantly. Without some of the flexibility, you're going to get sort of left in the past. And if you keep going and doing just the same thing over and over and wondering why it's not working. It's you're not learning from the mistakes that others have made, and you're repeating them yourself. It's winning is hard enough already in this industry, so just try to stay as flexible as you can and adaptive to the changing landscape and to the changing possibilities of what might become your market. Go ahead. So now we'll go into some of the most commonly asked questions that I get. And these are, some of them are basic, some of them are a little bit harder, but I'll go into as much detail as I can and give you some actionable tips here. So how do you find government contracting opportunities? There's so many ways to do this. It used to be called FedBizOps, but now it's called SAM.gov, System for Award Management. That is the posting place of choice for government contracting opportunities. You can use keywords, locations, NAICS codes, other criteria to find opportunities that match your capabilities. You can save searches. You can do the entire, hoopla of things that creates an email for you that generates a list of opportunities that are relevant. SAM.gov is not the most efficient or smoothest website, and it was government built. So ultimately, that's not the only thing that you have to use. There's a bunch of other resources. So finding agency forecasts. Many of them will put out what's called long range acquisition forecasts, LRAFs. Those are forecasts that basically forecast the expiring contracts and the new upcoming needs for the next foreseeable period. So maybe a year, some do quarterly, some do 5 years, 2 years, etc. You can find these generally on agency websites. A good Google search will return federal agency procurement forecasts, and ultimately going to the events that they hold, things like procurement acquisition lead time meetings, PALTs, are industry events and so forth that are essentially meetings and webinars, meetings/webinars that they hold to brief industry on the upcoming opportunities. It's a great way to learn about things that are coming up and get a sense for what the government's looking for. Ultimately meeting with the government customer as well, and there's a variety of paid services that you can utilize. I personally have utilized basically all of the paid services, so if you've got a question about a tool, I'm happy to provide some feedback or insight on that. Go ahead. How do you forecast opportunities? It's a great question. Analyzing agency budgets is going to be where I generally will get a start from, because I want to know where the money is, and I tend to follow money from the top and mid side down. And so following the agency budgets and getting a sense for where the government is planning to spend their money and what areas they're planning on spending their money in, what's increasing, what's decreasing, where they're spending more, where they're new spending, and getting a sense for what they've previously spent money on, so what they're likely to spend money on in the future. Many government requirements are recurring, so you'll find that there will be contracts that will be released, and then 5 years later they will come up for recompete, and they may be given to a new contractor depending on if that contractor can bid efficiently. Finding those contracts that are going to come up for recompete are forecasted opportunities. Those are opportunities that are going to be expiring or have even some that have recently expired, maybe potential, and those will be recompeted. You'll have an opportunity to bid on them. And ultimately finding their strategic plans. As I mentioned earlier, they publish strategic plans that outline their goals and objectives. These can give you a sense as to what the government's looking for long term, and give you a sense as to what sort of contracting opportunities might come out of that and where they might come from. Go ahead. Third, I often am asked, okay, what's a strong capture strategy? How do I make one? What does that look like? And so some real surefire tips: making sure that you assess that opportunity, determine if it's a good fit, run it through your pursuit process, your qualification initial, and then your bid no bid. So is it real? Does it have money? Can we do it? Those are my 3 typical initial qualifiers. And then going into, okay, the bid no bid process, once you get further down that road and looking at the requirements, competition, and the customer's need to find out if it's a good fit. Doing a thorough assessment of the opportunity. Then identifying your strengths and weaknesses and being really honest with yourself. making sure that you understand if your strengths really do align with the opportunity, and if your weaknesses are so weak that they could prevent your strengths from being as strong. Developing a win strategy that outlines how you plan to win the contract. Yeah, simple. It should include your value proposition, your pricing strategy, your plan for differentiating yourself from the competition, and it should be fairly detailed in that regard, depending on how big the opportunity is and how big your company is, how many people are on the capture team. Might change the the depth of the capture plan, but it ultimately needs to have those things outlined pretty clearly in some sort of documented fashion, so that you can go back to those and check those as you're going along to make sure that those things still align. This opportunity is still a good fit for us. We're on track for strategy, and making sure that you document it in a capture plan, have a template, outline the approach, the timeline, the budget that you're going to spend on the pursuit. Like if you're going to spend endless money on a pursuit that's got a low probability of win, it's probably not necessarily the best pursuit. So making sure that you've got a place to document that so that you can see that and assess that at that level of depth. Go ahead. Okay, so the fourth most common is how can I stay ahead of the competition? Knowing your competition inside and out is not as hard as you would think. Researching their strengths and weaknesses, determining if they're likely to bid on a contract coming up by attending industry days and pre-contract or pre-solicitation meetings, basically exploiting their weaknesses by highlighting your own strengths. It can be really powerful for differentiating yourself from the competition. Basically, if you can differentiate yourself from them by mitigating your weaknesses, by partnering with other companies or investing in new capabilities or advancing your position, you can ultimately take that edge over the competition as long as you're staying aware of what your competition is doing. What? And finally, what makes a winning proposal? It depends. The answer is it's going to be it truly depends, but there's aspects that apply to basically all winning proposals as a whole. They're compliant with solicitation requirements. That means following the instructions to the T, to the letter, and providing all of the required information, not just parts and portions, not just what makes you sound good or what you can provide, but providing everything that's asked for. They're responsive. They're responsive to the customer's needs. It shows that you understand what they need, their requirements, and that you're providing a solution that meets those specific needs, not just a solution for any old need. They're well written. They are easy to read and understand. They don't have a bunch of jargon, and they've got they don't have weird structures. They've got a clear, easy to follow structure, story, and they make the government's request and requirements for formatting look decent. It tells your story in a way that the government is unexpected, is not expecting, right? You're giving them more than what they're asking for in terms of being able to provide value to what the requirement is. And they're compelling. You're making sure that they're persuasive, they're highlighting your strengths, you're mitigating your competition's weaknesses, your weaknesses, you're mitigating your competition's weaknesses with your strengths, and ultimately overcoming their incumbency with a clear value proposition that highlights the differentiators that you bring over the competition. It's a lot. Making a winning proposal, getting into government contracting, all of it is a lot. We'll cut it there. Next, Emma. Thanks. So we covered a ton, and as usual, federal contracting is a fire hose. So learning new ways to succeed in the federal arena is absolutely more than a half an hour endeavor. If you have questions, please reach out to me. I am happy to chat. I am a resource here for you and available to chat anytime. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always pushing out information, opinions, content, articles, stuff that you might find helpful. And I can make my network available to you there. My company's Collaborative Compositions. I provide federal business development consulting and small and mid-sized businesses. If you need fractional business development support, here to help you, please reach out. Happy to answer any questions, and thanks.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. We'll open the floor now to questions. So please type them into the control bar and I will read them out. Okay, our first question. Do you think the region makes a difference in the team you build, or is it more about reputation?
Region versus reputation. It's going to be reputation. Regionally, it depends on if the requirement is based in a region and requires there to be specific installations there. But it ultimately, the reputation is going to be stronger. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, actually, just recently. And there's an opportunity out there. There's a variety of companies that are interested in the opportunity, and they're all establishing presences in Albuquerque. So they're going to the region. They'll make it happen, and their reputation is carrying them in that bit. So I'd say reputation.
Okay. Where is a good place to start market research?
Okay, good place to start market research. If you're trying to do market research on federal entities, I would say I like USA Spending over SAM.gov because SAM.gov is just kind of a clunky government website, and USA Spending has a little bit better user interface. So I tend to go to USA Spending and get a feel for what the agencies are spending on, and do that search based on keywords that are relevant to you and your NAICS codes as well.
Okay. Is the EVA online system still being used?
EVA online system. Can you give me a little bit more about that acronym, EVA?
It is, I apologize.
No worries.
Lowercase e, capital VA.
Oh, the electronic VA system. Yes. Yeah. They not really. It's not really. It's not really used. The VA's gosh, the VA's procurement acquisition system right now is an interesting story. They're using a lot of the federal supply schedules.
Okay. Could you share some tools you use to find government networking events?
Sure. I love Jennifer Schaus for government networking events. I will absolutely shamelessly plug that. And I go to gov events a lot. I'm also a member of a ton of industry associations. So if you're in the defense world, if you want to serve the defense market, you must be a member of NDIA, the National Defense Industrial Association. And oftentimes AVSEA is another one. It's the Air Force Electronics or Electrical Association. And it's one of the oldest industry associations. They host like tons of events throughout the year, very specific events, broader events, things like AUSA you'll find is another one that you should be a member of if you would like to serve with the Army. They host these large conferences that you'll find are out there for folks.
Okay, great. That looks like all the questions here. Thank you so much, Chelsea. If you have any questions for her today, please contact her using the information you see on the screen or her LinkedIn, as she mentioned. Today's webinar can be found on our YouTube channel within 24 hours, and the slides are always going to be on our SlideShare site. Friendly reminder, our Big Tech and Federal Contracting webinar series kicks off this fall. There'll be 15 webinars, 15 Wednesdays. All webinars are free to attend. Please take advantage of our heavily discounted sponsor rates to get in front of federal contractors, obtain registration list, and share a consistent message over the course of 15 webinars. Again, thank you all for attending. You can catch today's replay on YouTube, and if you're currently watching this YouTube video, please leave us a comment or like the video and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear from you. That's all for today. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you so much, Chelsea.
Thanks.